Stop letting native speakers talk over you. Every time you hesitate, you lose the room. You are running out of time to fix these hidden pronunciation errors before you are permanently sidelined. We are decoding movie speed blended vowels right now. Master this today or stay invisible forever. The clock is ticking. Let us go. Here is what nobody tells you. The reason you hesitate, the reason your mind goes blank in the middle of a sentence, the reason native speakers finish your words before you do. It is not because your vocabulary is weak. It is not because your grammar is wrong. It is because of something far more specific, far more fixable, and far more powerful than either of those things. It is the way English actually sounds when it moves at full speed. And today, that changes. Stay with me. When you learned English, whether in a classroom, from a textbook, or through apps on your phone, you were taught something that was only partially true. You were taught English as it is written, clean, separated, one word at a time. But that is not how English lives in the real world. That is not how it sounds in a movie, in a meeting, in a crowded restaurant, or in the mouth of someone who has been speaking it since before they could read. Real English is blended. It is connected. It runs together in ways that were never explained to you, and that silence has been costing you every single day. Think about that for a moment. You have been playing a game where the other team has a different rulebook, and the most frustrating part is that nobody handed you that rulebook. Nobody sat you down and said, "Look, when native speakers talk, sounds merge, letters disappear, entire syllables collapse into something new." Nobody said that. And so you kept hearing sounds that did not match the words you knew, and your brain scrambled to keep up. And in that scramble, you lost seconds. And in conversation, seconds are everything. This is the part most people miss. English is what linguists call a stress-timed language. That means the rhythm of English is not about how many syllables a sentence has. It is about how many stressed beats it has. So a sentence with 12 words and a sentence with 4 words can take almost the same amount of time to say out loud because the unstressed words shrink, blur, and fuse together to keep the beat. This is not laziness. This is not slang. This is the fundamental architecture of how English flows, and it is happening in every conversation around you. All the time. Listen closely now. Let us take one of the most common examples, the phrase want to. In written English, those are 2 separate words, W-A-N-T and T-O. But in natural spoken English, that phrase becomes wanna, I wanna go, she wanna leave, they wanna know. Now you have heard that before, right? But here is what you probably did not know. That is not informal speech. That is not sloppy speech. That is connected speech, and it follows exact phonetic rules. Once you learn those rules, you stop hearing noise and you start hearing a system. Here is where it gets interesting. The same thing happens with going to, which becomes gonna. It happens with have to, which becomes have to. It happens with kind of, which becomes kinda. Out of becomes outa. A lot of becomes a lotta. Give me becomes gimme. Let me becomes lemme. These are not mistakes. These are not things you should avoid. These are the sounds of native fluency, and if you cannot hear them, recognize them, and eventually produce them yourself, you will always feel like you are one step behind the conversation. And here is the truth. The people who sound fluent, not just correct, but genuinely fluent, they are not just using better vocabulary. They have mastered the music of English. They know when to stress a word and when to swallow it. They know which sounds merge and which ones hold their shape. They know that English is a rhythm first, and a collection of words second. And once you understand that, your entire approach to learning shifts. Pay attention to this. There is a specific phenomenon that sits at the heart of what we are discussing today, and it is called vowel reduction. In English, when a vowel appears in an unstressed syllable, it often changes. It does not stay as the clean, full sound you learned from a pronunciation chart. It reduces. It softens. It becomes a sound that linguists call the schwa. The schwa is the most common sound in the entire English language, and there is a very high probability that nobody told you that in your English class. Do not move past this. The schwa sounds like, just that. And it replaces nearly every unstressed vowel in natural spoken English. The word about does not sound like about. It sounds like U-boat. The word today does not sound like today. It sounds like today. The word together does not sound like together. It sounds like together. And the word banana, a word you have known for years, it is not banana. It is bunana. Two schwas, hiding in plain sight every single day. Now this is important. When native speakers talk at full speed, the schwa is not just present. It is dominant. It fills every gap. It smooths every transition. It is the glue that holds the rhythm together. And your ears, trained on textbook pronunciation, have been filtering it out, trying to match what you hear to what you memorized, and failing, because the match is never quite right. That is the source of the confusion. Not your intelligence, not your dedication, just a missing piece of information. Here is the shift. Once you train your ear to hear the schwa, your listening comprehension changes overnight. Sentences that felt like a blur of sound start to separate themselves. You begin to hear the structure underneath the speed. You stop chasing every syllable and start feeling the beat. And when you feel the beat of a language, you stop translating and you start thinking directly in that language. That is the line between someone who knows English and someone who lives in it. Remember this. There's another piece of blended speech that destroys comprehension more than almost anything else, and it happens at the boundaries between words. When one word ends in a consonant and the next word begins with a vowel, those two sounds fuse together. This is called linking, and it is everywhere. The phrase an apple does not sound like an apple. It sounds like a napple. One fluid sound? The phrase pick it up does not sound like three separate words. It sounds like pick it up. Turn it off sounds like turn it off. Take it easy sounds like tack it easy. Write this down. Once you hear this happening, you will never unhear it, and you will start to understand why so many English learners say the same thing. I understand English when my teacher speaks, but I cannot understand movies. I cannot understand the news. I cannot understand when people talk fast. It is not the speed that is the problem. It is the linking. It is the reduction. It is the blending. You were learning one version of English, and the world was speaking another. Most people skip over this next part. There is a concept in linguistics called assimilation, and in English, it means that sounds at the end of one word actually change based on the sound at the beginning of the next word. Take the phrase, that person. In careful speech, you might say that and then person. But in natural connected speech, the T at the end of that and the P at the beginning of person pull toward each other, and the result sounds more like that person. The T softens. It shifts. It accommodates the next sound before it arrives. This is happening in every single sentence. In the phrase, good boy, the D in good becomes something closer to a B because your mouth is already preparing for the B in boy. In the phrase 10 minutes, that N begins to shift toward the M because both sounds are made in a similar place in your mouth and your brain is already thinking ahead. English is not pronounced one sound at a time. It is pronounced in anticipation. Each sound is already halfway preparing for the next one. And that is the real secret of how fluent speech works. Here is what this means for you practically. You do not need to speak faster. Speed is not the goal. Clarity and rhythm are the goal. And clarity in English does not come from hitting every sound perfectly. It comes from hitting the right sounds with the right weight in the right places and letting the rest relax. The stressed syllables carry the meaning. The unstressed syllables carry the flow. Too many learners over-articulate every syllable trying to be correct, and the result, ironically, is that they sound less natural and less confident, not more. Stay with this idea. Think about the words that carry meaning in a sentence. The nouns, the main verbs, the adjectives, the question words. Those are the beats. Those are the pillars. Everything else, the prepositions, the articles, the auxiliary verbs, the pronouns, those are the filler, the connective tissue. In natural English, you lean into the pillars and you glide past the filler. When you start doing that consciously, your speech takes on a completely different quality. It sounds effortless. It sounds authoritative. It sounds like someone who belongs in the room. And belonging in the room, that is the point. Because language is not just about communication. It is about presence. It is about how you are perceived before you have even finished your first sentence. Research consistently shows that people make sweeping judgments about intelligence, competence, and confidence based on how someone speaks within the first few seconds of hearing them. That is not fair. But it is true. And the good news, the genuinely good news, is that pronunciation is a physical skill. It is a skill of the mouth, the tongue, the jaw, the breath. And physical skills can be trained. Here is how you begin. The first step is to stop reading English and start listening to it, not as a passive background activity, as active, focused, forensic listening. Watch a scene from a film you already know well, a scene you can almost recite. And instead of watching the story, watch the mouths. Listen for where the words fuse. Listen for the schwas. Listen for the linking. You already know the meaning, so your brain is free to hear the sound, and that is when the patterns start to appear. This is the key that unlocks everything. The second step is to shadow. Shadowing means you listen to a native speaker and you repeat what they say in real time, following their rhythm, their stress, their pace, their exact sound. Not reading a transcript, not translating, just mirroring. It feels uncomfortable at first. It feels too fast, too loose, too imprecise. But discomfort in language learning is a sign that you're working at the edge of your current ability, and that is exactly where growth lives. Keep going. You are closer than you think. The third step is to stop punishing yourself for the sounds you do not yet have. There are sounds in English that simply do not exist in other languages. The th sound, the short I sound in the word sit versus the long E sound in the word seat, the difference between the V, E, and the W. These take time. These take repetition. These take your mouth-learning muscle memory that it has never been asked to perform before. That is not failure. That is biology. And your biology will catch up if you give it the right input consistently. Here's the final truth I want to leave with you today. The native speakers who talk over you are not smarter than you. They are not more deserving than you. They simply had an accident of birth that gave them thousands of hours of audio input in English before they were old enough to choose otherwise. You are making a conscious choice that they never had to make. You are walking into a room where the game was already started, picking up the controller mid-round and deciding to win anyway. That is not a disadvantage. That is a different kind of strength entirely. Do not underestimate what you are doing. Every time you sit down and study these patterns, every time you shadow a native speaker, every time you force your mouth into a shape it has never made before, every time you choose to speak when it would have been easier to stay quiet, you are closing the gap. You're rewriting the audio map in your brain. You are becoming someone who does not just know English, but who sounds like they belong inside it. And that version of you does not hesitate. That version does not lose the room. That version does not get talked over. That version walks into the conversation and takes up the space they deserve. The blended vowels are not a barrier anymore. They are a code, and you now know how to read it. The question is simple. What are you going to do with that today? Start now. The room is waiting for you. But before you go, I want to give you one more thing. Because knowing the theory is one thing, but I want you to walk away from this with something you can use in the next 10 minutes. Here is a practical drill that works. Take any sentence from a film, a podcast, or a conversation you admire. Something short. 5 to 8 words. Listen to it 10 times in a row. Not 10 times while doing something else, but 10 times sitting still, doing nothing but listening. On the first few listens, you are just letting it wash over you. On the 4th or 5th, you start to feel the rhythm. You start to notice where the weight falls. By the 8th, you are beginning to anticipate it. By the 10th, you are inside it. That is the beginning of fluency. Then you open your mouth and you say it out loud, not from memory, not translating, just mirroring the sound you just absorbed. You say it badly the first time. You say it a little better the second. You say it again, and again. And on the 5th or 6th attempt, something clicks. Your mouth finds the shape. The rhythm starts to feel natural. That is a new neural pathway forming in real time. That is your brain rewriting itself. And every time you do this drill, you're accelerating that process. Here is something important to understand about confidence in language. Confidence in speaking English does not come before the practice. It comes after the repetition. People who wait to feel confident before they speak are waiting for something that will never arrive on its own. Confidence is a byproduct of accumulated attempts. It is what happens when your body has done something enough times that it stops feeling dangerous. So the only path to confidence is through the discomfort of trying out loud, making the sounds, getting it wrong, adjusting, and trying again. Every attempt counts. And here is what I want you to remember on the days when it feels slow, on the days when you listen to a native speaker and you still cannot catch every word, on the days when you speak and you feel the hesitation creeping back in. Progress in language is not linear. It does not move in a straight line upward. It moves in leaps. You plateau, you practice, you plateau again, and then something breaks open. A piece clicks into place. A pattern you have been reaching for suddenly becomes automatic, and you realize you are not where you were 6 weeks ago. You are somewhere entirely new. That leap is coming for you. The blended vowels, the schwas, the linking, the stress patterns, all of it is learnable. All of it is within reach. And you have already taken the most important step, which is understanding that there is a system underneath the speed. That the confusion you felt was not a reflection of your ability. It was a gap in your information. And now that gap is closing. The room is not just waiting for you. It needs what you have to say. Go say it.